Hello, hello, Josie here. Are you ready for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and are you sure? Okay, here we go. I need to fix this right quick. It's windy here today. I do want this to look as presentable as possible, but it is what it is. And we're going to continue to do what God has called me to do, and I'm going to speak on something that I started watching this morning, actually last night, and I finished watching it this morning, and it's nothing new to me. I've discussed this. I've thought about this. I've processed this before, and it speaks on lust, lustful behavior, lustful desires, and the dangers of being caught up in lust. The damage that can happen not only to your vessel, to your sexual health, your mental health and well-being, relationships. It is dangerous to get involved with lust. And I was guided towards an individual online who had lust in their name, and lust is one of the 7 deadly sins. So basically, to engage with this person was to engage in sinful activity and sinful behavior, and possibly not being able to get rid of lust or the lustful desires and whatnot. And I was seeing this guy by the name of Andrew for a little over 3 years, and I would see him every weekend. This was someone that was, in all honesty, not very attractive. In the eyes of a lot of people that would have looked at him, they would not have found him at all attractive or stimulating or enticing or someone that they'd want to be in a relationship with or even engage sexually with. It didn't matter the size of his penis. It didn't matter how good his tongue skills were. People would normally be turned off to him, and I was guided towards this person. And you might think, like, who would guide you towards this person? A person like that. One that is lustful and also not even attractive, not good looking. And I'm going to say that it was God that guided me towards him. God guided me towards him. Others may think that they were the reason, or they were the ones that guided me towards that person, but no, it was God that guided me towards him. And the reason why God guided me towards him was because he was a dangerous person. He was a dangerous person, and I was going to be the last person that he had engagement with before his health was starting or going to decline even further. And how he engaged with me, how he treated me, was going to affect not only his last days, but his next lifetime because of his behaviors and actions in the lifetime that I dealt with him. You might say, are you serious, Josie? Yes, I'm serious. I'm serious. Thinking back on it now, how I even met with him was God arranged. It was a late night. It was probably like after 11, maybe after midnight. And on this site, you have the ability to show your cam. And he had his camera on, and he was showing himself off and whatnot. And people would click on. You could see how many people were in the room. People would click on, and then they would click off. He'd try to have a conversation with someone or start a conversation, and nobody wanted to have a conversation with him. Nobody wanted to talk to him because they didn't find him attractive. He was showing his stuff on camera and everything, and decent size, I guess, but, he just didn't look attractive. He was not someone that you wanted to, hook up with sexually. It's like anybody that would have hooked up with him would have been desperate, and nobody was, and this is going to sound really mean, nobody was that desperate enough, at least that night. And God guided me to talk with him, to chat with him, have a conversation with him, and we decided to meet up at a bookstore near his house. And we had our time together there, and I was like, okay, it was nice to meet you. Maybe we'll hang out again. I don't know. And his response was, there are other guys here, And I looked at him and I said, I didn't come here for them. I came here for you. And he had this look on his face of like surprise, amazement, like, really? And I left. I finished with him and I left. I didn't entertain anybody else because, like I said, I was only there. I was only guided to see him, not anybody else. So that's what I did. So what ended up happening was I did not plan on seeing him again, but I was guided or directed otherwise. So the next weekend, decided to meet up at his house or whatever, his place, and engaged in full out sex that evening. And, it was okay. It was alright. It was kind of weird. The energy, the vibe in the place, it just seemed a little bit off to me. So, but nonetheless, it was decent, it was pleasurable, and I was not about hooking up with any and everybody. I was not trying to have a roster. I was not trying to engage with random people, to have sex with. I was interested in one individual that I could see on a steady basis. As long as it was respectful and I had a good time and it wasn't weird and, I didn't have any issue engaging sexually with that individual. I wasn't really hung up on your looks. I mean, there's much more to an individual besides the way they look. What is their personality, their attitude, their manners, their intelligence? That is what turns me on really much more than anything, is your intelligence, your ability to hold a conversation, your ability to communicate respectfully, and like I said, we saw each other for over 3 years, every Saturday night. And, I, in a way, look forward to it, and he definitely looked forward to it because nobody was paying him any attention, any mind, until shortly before we started to, basically decide not to see each other anymore. It's amazing when a man gets that energy boost back, when he gets that confidence back in himself and whatnot. Other people can feel that and read that and sense it on him and want that. So I guess he attracted somebody else, or somebody else found him to be interesting. And I didn't know anything about energy drain. I didn't know anything about sexual energy and how powerful that is. I didn't understand anything about witchcraft, warlock. I didn't understand anything about sexual exchange during sex. I didn't understand anything about that, but he did. He was very much so aware. So basically, when we would have sex, he was draining me, siphoning from me for his pleasure as well as his gain and his benefit. Taking that energy that was on him, and it would attract other individuals to him, which is really what that did. So he, basically started seeing, other people started seeing him as being an option, being someone to entertain, to get together with. So he basically felt like, he didn't need to be with me anymore. He got everything he needed, everything he wanted, desired, so on and so forth. And it was basically, move on, The way he did it was very rude. It was very disrespectful. And that was his choice, how he chose to do it. But like I said, God had me to approach this guy or go to this guy for a reason. And I don't fully believe he knew um, who I was until it was too late. After him, I didn't engage in that type of behavior really too much anymore. I had some interactions with individuals, but nothing ever like that again. It was almost kind of like I'd entertain it. Maybe we would get together, maybe not. He was also someone that was able to use other people's vessels, and basically body jump into other individuals, which was weird, but I picked up on that. And it was on this website in particular. When I tell you that the devil is definitely on these dating sites and on these web apps and so on and so forth, the devil is on these web apps and dating sites and sex sites. He is aware that lust is a sin. He is aware that a lot of men are interested in sex and will try to find sex any way they can, and the devil will guide individuals towards these sex sites, basically as rewards for these men that are engaging in behavior that he is pleasing of. So I think I'm going to leave it at that for right now. I've shared quite a bit in regard. When I tell you that engaging in lustful behaviors is really not something you want to do, once that gets on you, in you, it can really mess you up. These men can drain from you, siphon from you, steal from you. It can affect your creativity. It can affect your ability to engage in relationships, honest, true, real relationships, not lust-based. You start to see everybody as just being basically a sexual object, a sexual tool, which, a lot of men on these dating sites and sex sites are on there behaving in that manner of sex is just a tool, sex is just for pleasure and fun, as well as getting energy and siphoning from other individuals, especially those that are unknowing, which is very difficult nowadays for these sites to be productive and or for these men to be successful on these sites, because a lot of people know what's up and they want to be compensated. They want money to engage with sex with these men. They're not just giving it up for free. They want money, and these men don't want to pay money. They want to get the sex for free. They want to get the energy for free. They want to drain and siphon from you without having to invest anything in you except their penis. That's it. And their time. And after they get what they want, they don't want it again. They want somebody else to drain from, unless you're good supply. So it's best to not even engage with these individuals. It's best to leave them alone. That's why you really should not be engaging in those immoral acts and behaviors prior to marriage. There's a reason why God didn't want you to engage in sex until you're married. So, gotta go.